I'm amazed by a lot of things about you, but one thing that always comes to mind immediately when I see you and hear you is that I think you're one of the greatest people to preserve their inner child, and I wanted to ask you about that. How you still maintain that youthfulness inside of you, and I see when I see you, I see a wise baby in a way. You know
Uh-huh.
what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't mean it in a condescending way. Although you have all this knowledge, I see you, at least at how it looks for me. You're experiencing the drums for the first time when I see you play the drums.
Well, you just answered your own question. That's pretty much uh, it's pretty much the way that's what goes on for me.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, you answered it.
Damn. Okay.
I mean, it's nothing I don't consciously think about. It's just I was lucky enough to have two parents that were smart enough to let me lead in a in that way.
Hmm.
You know, parents don't usually do that. I mean, parents usually tell kids everything to do, like as if they are not even human.
Hmm.
I don't think they mean to, uh, but in that one particular area, my parents were really. That's the whole reason I'm able to um, generate the perception that, for instance, you have. It really goes back from there. They never said don't do this or do it this way or you have to do it this way if you're going to. No, they. I think because they didn't know, and I think they were maybe that part of their humanness they were in touch with, and they let me um, discover things for myself, and then yeah, it's like if you let a young person lead, it's amazing what will happen, and rather than trying to keep a leash on them.
Right. Yeah.
And as long as they're not hurting themselves, or uh, I think it really makes a difference for young people. I mean, it did for me because I don't think about it, but when I hear people tell me that all the time, what you've said, and I think it really goes back to how we treat young people. Each one of us, when we come across young people, if you're going to be around them, I think it's something you really need to uh, consider. You have a huge impact, and it makes a big difference when you let them. Even though if you know that what's going on, it's not about oh I know better.
Hmm.
It's not about the ego, but it's about letting them feel like they're in charge because actually they're they are much smarter than we are. We just have been around a little longer
Hmm.
relative to them, and but they're functioning. I mean, we can't compete with it. I mean,
Yeah.
even you're much younger than me, but even yourself, I mean, they're much smarter than any adult.
Mm.
Children, they're infants, and I think that's what happened with me.
Yeah.
A lot of things didn't happen, but that I feel so lucky that I had parents that they didn't know what this drumming stuff was or what following music was, but uh, they paid attention to me going for it,
Right.
and that's I'll never be able to thank them enough.
Hmm. That's beautiful. What did they do?
You mean in their
Yeah.
lives? My mother was a professional secretary
Mm.
uh, from the time she was in high school. Um, my father was a salesman,
Mm.
very working class.
Yeah.
Before I came along, it was things were really, really stressed and very kind of brutal. It was a little better by the time I came along, but that's pretty much what they did.
Yeah. So what was the spark that made you want to discover the drum?
Well, we lived in a flat, like a two-story house, and we were on the bottom floor. And we had a little backyard, and the trash cans were out in the back. And I would take the trash out every day, and we had an alleyway. And just maybe 6 doors up the block from me, I would hear this tapping on a. I didn't know what it was, and it was a guy who lived in the neighborhood who was, a few years older than myself, and I would empty the trash and then walk up and just kind of listen. And I knew him, but I didn't want to go inside of the yard and bother him or anything. So I would keep listening, and then when I saw him, one time he said, "Come on in." So I came in and just looked at the drum, and he said, "I'm going to stop playing this, and I'll sell it to you if you want for $20, because I'm not going to continue." And I was I think I was in third grade or fourth grade elementary school. It was about 8.5 or 9. So it was a summer. School was just fixing to end, and so I cut grass with a lawnmower all summer long, and saved up $20.
That takes you a summer.
Well, yeah,
Back then, yeah.
yeah, and it was not a gas mower.
Yeah, okay, I see.
It was a hand mower. So I just
Yeah.
went all throughout the neighborhood,
Mm.
and I don't know. I just kind of liked something about the sound. And at third grade or fourth grade, they start you out playing those little plastic flutes, tonettes they called it. And I wanted to sign up for the band, and I kind of liked this thing of like it wasn't a it was a potential noisemaker, but I kind of liked what might be possible because I didn't know. So I was kind of fascinated, and I used to beat on the trash cans anyhow.
Yeah.
When I take out the trash, and I'd stay there, and then also when I would help out doing laundry at the laundromat or something, I like the sound. When you tap on a washing machine,
Yeah.
it's hollow and it reverberates.
Yeah.
I used to like that, So I would just tap. And my brother used to tap along to the radio, just tap along to the whatever was playing on the radio. He'd tap on the table and stuff. So I kind of liked hearing rhythm, although it was nothing special. It wasn't a special activity. It was just part of life in that time. And I think that was the spark.
Yeah. Do you remember, or would you say who were the first guys who also let you lead when you were starting to play the drum?
We're in an age now when it's finally coming out what a boys club this is, and it's really stupid. It's really stupid that it has still to this day remained that. And I have to say that some of the most influential people at the very beginning and all throughout were just people, and they were women and men. And my mom was, she heard through her job that one of her colleagues had a son that was starting a band, and they were looking for a drummer. And my mother just said, "Hey, my son plays the drums, and he has and I was like a little kid. Her colleague's son was maybe 4 or 5 years older. And when you're a little kid, that's a big change. My mother really campaigned, not pushing. She just was really proud, and thought, well, hey, maybe he would like to do this. And so that, and also the band director at my elementary school. She was a violist in the symphony, and she probably was the first musician that really, I mean, she opened the door, really.
How?
Uh, well, her name was Elizabeth Franklin Woodson, and she was a violist for the Richmond Symphony, and she taught music in the elementary schools. And we would rehearse, we would hold our, there was no band room. It was just, we used the stage at the school auditorium. And there was a little room which she used as her office. And after school one day, she heard me and a trombone player and a trumpet player just jamming on Louie Louie by the Kinks. The Kinks had the hit. It was originally written by I think a West Indian musician. I forgot his name right now. But anyhow, Louie Louie was a huge hit at the time. And it's just 3 chords. And and there was no drum set. I put the concert bass drum on the floor, and I put a drumstick in my shoe, and I kind of kicked the bass drum, and then I took the snare drum and set it up by it, and then there was a suspended cymbal. And I don't know if you know that version of the song, but it's just really basic. A lot of...
Maybe I've heard it. I don't have it in my mind right now.
It's just 3 chords, 1, 4, 5, over and over and over in a 2-bar pattern, all 3 chords, 1, 4, 5, 4, 1. And, yeah, songwriter. My partner here, Robin, is just bringing me information. Songwriters are Richard Berry.
Okay.
Louie Louie. And the Kinks kind of ripped it off and had the big hit.
Right, okay.
Thanks.
It's great that you have an assistant.
She's the one who I steal all my stuff from. She's an amazing percussionist, Robin Shulkovsky. She's incredible.
Great.
Yeah. So anyhow, we thought, hey, let's stay after school and just jam, and so we did that, and we were just going da 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 da. That's all the song is.
Yeah.
That's it. It doesn't go anywhere. It's just lyrics and we were doing it for about 10 or 15 minutes. We thought we were all alone. And then all of a sudden, we see a door opening off the side of the stage. And she comes out, and she's like clapping and moving around. She was an old lady, I mean, for us at the time, she's probably like in her 40s or something, but that was old.
Sure, yeah.
And she was dancing, and she said, hey, fellas, why don't we do this at the parent-teachers meeting? We'll do a concert, and we'll do this,
Great.
We'll feature you 3, we'll do our normal program, but then we'll feature you in the middle of the program. That sounds great. Do it again.
Yeah.
And she was laughing and encouraging us. I mean, that was it. And she went up to my mother at one of these meetings where all the teachers meet the parents of the kids. And she went up to my mother and my father, and she grabbed their hands, and she said, get this child a teacher.
Mm.
She shook them.
Yeah.
And she suggested a guy who was a fabulous, probably the best teacher I ever had in my life. Couldn't play, wasn't really it wasn't anybody that you would say is a really great player.
Mm-hmm.
But the way he taught me was just fantastic. He just taught me, he showed me how to hold the sticks, or he didn't even have a lot of technique, but he taught me how to figure out how to read music.
Okay.
Or how to read rhythms. I don't really read pitches.
Yeah.
I never trained that way. I basically read single rhythm lines. Uh, that's how I was trained. But the way he taught me to do it was so fantastic, and he just gave me enough information for me to go home and figure everything out. So he
Right.
would give me a page to figure out, and he would show me, okay, this is the time signature. This is what the top number means. This is what the bottom number means. And this is what a quarter note looks like. And this is what a quarter note rest looks like. And here, go home and you figure the rest out and come back next week and play it for me.
Great.
So he didn't spoon feed me.
Hmm. He also let you lead in a way, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I think that's really so important for, when you're relating to people, trying to share something with them that they don't know how to do, that you do know how to do. I think a lot of times teachers forget that point where they themselves were not able to do it and how they got to that moment where,
That moment
oh,
is special, right?
yeah, and most people don't remember that.
Hmm.
And I mean, if you're going to share information with people, I think that's really the prerequisite in order so that the person understands, because it's so easy. Once you start, okay, you don't even think about what is a time signature. But to somebody that doesn't know anything,
Mm.
it's a really hard thing to comprehend and to understand. And to put yourself there is the best chance you have at allowing them to understand it fully. Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, Mrs. Woodson, she was really crucial, and the teacher's name was C.L. McClure.
Hmm.
We called him Mac McClure. Very nice guy, really, and he played the kind of jobs where you just play. Um, they had what they call cotillion in a lot of these Catholic schools. They would have dances, and they had what they call cotillion. It's just, I don't even know what that word means, but it was just ordered dances where people learn a dance and there's a band that plays a song that has the rhythm that they dance to. Real corny stuff.
Mm.
And I remember when I was in a rock and roll band, we would play the rock and roll half of the evening, and he was in a band sometimes that played at the beginning of the evening when people were trying to learn a waltz
Right.
and learn a foxtrot and all that stuff. And I would watch him play, and even though I was a little bit, I wasn't disappointed. I just didn't have anything to compare it to. I just watched him, how he played, and then he would watch when I played a little bit, and he was just really supportive. He was never judgmental of the kind of music I was involved with. Um, he was basically uh, in the music business. He was a salesman at this music store.
Mm.
He was partners with a guy, and he taught drum lessons, I guess, to help the income, his
Yeah.
income. But he was a great, great teacher,
Mm.
you know. And unfortunately, all the people in my early stages, they all vanished very quickly. He was killed in an automobile accident.
Oh.
Um, I mean, I studied with him, and then he said, "I've taught you all I can teach you. I'd like to pass you on to this." He was the local big band drummer, a guy named Dick Proctor. None of these people, are any people that people know about, but to me, they were the real important
Yeah.
people for me. And so this guy was kind of like he played with the big band, um, and he was kind of like, wow, if you can study with this guy, that's a pretty big deal, And
Hmm.
so he knew him, and he said, hey, I have a student, and I think he would be good to study with you. And so and right after I made that transition. He passed away in an automobile accident.
Mm.
And then Mrs. Woodson, I was in junior high school, and she passed away. And all these people that I met and that were very important to me at that time, a lot of them had early deaths from either accidents or cancer or, I never got to the privilege to go back at the point when I had a little bit more together and a little bit more to offer, to go back and like say, hey, thanks. I learned this, because of you. I never had
Yeah.
that opportunity. But
Well, you're celebrating them when you play, I guess.
yeah, I always think about them.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
special.
they're there.
Ah, great. Was Carmen McRae somebody who let you lead also?
Yeah, from an while I was still I came up in Richmond, Virginia. There were two people who were older than me. They were. Um, my first playing experience was in the school band. There wasn't a jazz band. There were no jazz programs. It was like a concert band, and you play oompa marches.
Yeah.
That's it. And occasionally, yeah, while I was in elementary school, I tried out for this rock and roll band that was in the neighborhood, and I made it. They liked me. And so we would rehearse 3-4 days a week right after school. And it was right around the corner from where I went to school. And everybody lived within 2 or 3 blocks. The rest of the guys lived within a block of each other. And I had to walk maybe 4 or 5 blocks. And we played all the time, and we listened together. We learned we played music of the day, 1964, 65, Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles, Booker T and the MGs, Santana, the mid 60s, early into mid 60s. And we learned all of these songs by listening to the records and copying the solos and just directly by ear and helping each other and trying, and then fuck it up and then put the record back on. So it was a very direct process, and we all let each other. We all supported each other doing it. We did it together, and it was fun. And then while I was sometime during that time, while I was taking drum lessons from this guy Dick Proctor, he was going through a divorce, and he was teaching at this guy's house, his apartment. And this guy was also a student, and he was in college at the time, and I was like maybe 12 years old, or something like that, 11 or 12 years old. And my dad would drive me to this guy's apartment, and he had a roommate, and then all of a sudden he had another roommate, my drum teacher, while he was trying to figure out his divorce. And this guy's name was Tom Rodman.
Mm-hmm.
And, he went on to be in the business world, but he loves drumming with a passion to this day. But we remained friends since that time. His roommate was a guy, the reason I'm taking the time to tell you is that these two people were really important and have been every step of the way from 1960s to 2018. Tom's roommate was a guy named Bill Lohr, Lohr. Bill was a pianist, and Bill was a musician. Tom was he was interested in a lot of different things. Bill was more kind of quiet and really focused on music, and Tom was living life, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so, but these two guys shared, music together. They had a fantastic record collection. They had a really cool stereo, which I, didn't have. And they had headphones, which was a big deal. So I would hang out at their place just to listen to records with them. And it
Yeah.
was so cool because they were like big. You know, I was this little kid, and um, they loved doing that together. And
And when you're young, it makes an impression when you listen to music with guys that are older than you on what they pay attention, right?
yeah, you kind of look at how they look when they're listening,
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
it's really, I mean, it was not isolated. It was
Hmm.
a real social thing
Mm.
to share. It was really special. He had 33 Oscar Peterson records, and he knew every voicing on every one by ear.
That's Bill Lore, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
this guy is a genius. I mean, nobody knows of him, but I haven't heard anybody that plays voicings in the manner that he does, dealing with standard tunes and standard harmony. I know of no one that does it better and
But
understands it better.
but how come nobody's ever heard of him, or has somebody heard of him? Can I hear of him?
Well, a few people, but you know, I don't think anybody in outside of very small circles because you know, people make choices in life. Some people want to go to the big city and um, you know, get exposed or deal with all the bullshit that there is, and there's
Yeah.
tons of it. And other people just aren't really, uh, it's not part of their makeup to do that.
Hmm.
You know, Bill and I went to Berkeley together for a very short time, and they treated him really poorly
Mm.
because he didn't understand the terminology of what Berkeley called certain voicings. And so on the entrance test that they give for placement, you know, he was in my ear training class. You know, I mean, I didn't know jack shit. He, meanwhile, by that time, he knew voicings. You could play him any Bill Evans record, any Herbie Hancock record, any, you know, you just play, he would go right to the piano and nail the voicing.
Mm.
And not only nail it, but really understand why
Hmm.
that particular voicing, why the guy chose to do that, and why it worked. That's the thing that's so incredible about him. And like when I mean we worked together with Al Jarreau in the '70s
Mm.
um, for a very short period, and then one by one we each got fired for just really stupid music business reasons. And he played for Carmen McRae
Yeah.
uh, for a very short period. But sometimes, like when people don't have work, like Carmen didn't have work all the time, and he was a little bit older than me, and he had quite a few more responsibilities than I did at that time. This was mid '70s. When that happens, you have to keep working. You have to find work. You have to do something, and sometimes you take a gig because Carmen's not working, and then she gets a gig, and you can't do it. It's
Mm.
just that simple. And then they get somebody else, and it's just sometimes it works that way.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody experiences that. I've experienced that loads. When I was real busy with Bill Frisell, uh, I would get calls all the time from people, that I really wanted to play with, but it was like a one-shot thing, or at the moment it was a one-shot thing, and I was really committed to Bill and the music we were doing and the group. It was a long-range group. I've been lucky enough to always be attracted to people that had those kind of projects where
Yeah.
we were building something rather than going and doing a jazz show.
Yeah.
So I think with Bill Lore, I think that's part of it,
Mm.
a big part. I mean, there are tons of people that you never hear about that are just incredible,
Yeah.
incredible musicians on every instrument. And maybe some people, they don't like to fly, they don't like to leave town.
Mm-hmm.
Especially these days, if you don't like to fly, if you don't like to travel, you're not going to work in
Yeah,
on the jazz
it's
circuit.
true.
So that's a choice of that people make, or sometimes you're put in that position.
Mm.
It depends. So I think that's probably why, and plus your own ability to tolerate how much bullshit are you willing to put up with. And I think everybody has a different tolerance level,
It's
and
true.
Bill's is different than mine.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of strayed off the track, but I think what I was talking about was how influential those two guys were, Tom Rodman and Bill Lord. They let me lead. They accepted. They welcomed me. They didn't say, "Oh, you little kid, you don't know what you're talking." They didn't lay any of that. We were all equals when we had in front of the stereo and we were
Yeah.
talking about music, and I was just obsessed. I lived and breathed drumming and listening to music. And Bill Lord was the one that said, because up to that time I was fascinated by, of course, technical things, the surface things. You know, when I started playing, Gene Krupa was still actually alive and circulating.
Mm.
I got to see him play in Washington, D.C. with a quartet one time. He was on television all the time. Buddy Rich was
Yeah.
very much present. Ringo Starr was very present. James Brown was very present.
Mm.
Those. So I didn't have people saying, "Oh, you only listen to the jazz thing. Don't listen to this. It's rock and roll." Or I didn't have anybody saying anything about any of that stuff. It was all just part of something that, wow, there's somebody playing drums there.
Yeah.
I like the way that feels.
Yeah.
It might have been Charlie Pride, who was a African American country singer. It might have been Ray Charles. Might have been Booker T and the MGs. Might have been Jimmy Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Might have been Bitches Brew. I was lucky enough to be around adults that welcomed a young person and did not see me as a threat in any way because of my age, race, any kind of identity that they would perceive of me. I was really fortunate. And part of that, I guess, is when you're a young person, you aren't a threat in a certain way. To most adults, you're just a kid, and
Yeah.
that's kind of an advantage. When you get bigger and you start getting ugly, you're not this cute little kid anymore. When you get bigger, then you are perceived as a possible threat to whatever, for all the stupid reasons that we're uh, kind of diseased with as a society.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's where the really hard stuff happens, and then that's where how much bullshit are you willing to tolerate, and how do you navigate that?
Right.
And but these two guys, Tom Rodman and Bill Lord, they were. I can't tell you how many hours we spent listening over and over to like maybe one 4-bar phrase of a record, to where the record, when the needle would go down, after a while it would just go. And we had to wait weeks to get a record. If we
Mm-hmm.
heard of a new record coming out, I'd save some bread from, I worked all through, I was doing gigs, on
Yeah.
the weekends and stuff. So I would save money, and, I would make $20 or $15 for a gig or something. And I would save part of that to go buy records at the Churchill record shop, or any place you could buy records.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you had to order them special. I remember Miroslav Vitus had the Mountain in the Clouds, or
Oh
Infinite Search.
man.
I remember when that came out, I had to wait like 8 weeks. And I would call the music shop up every day. This
Yeah.
guy was he could tell from the way the phone rang.
Yeah.
Oh, it's this pain in the ass again. And then, is it in yet? And then finally one day they called me. They said, "Come down here and get this and stop
Yeah.
calling us."
Get out of our lives. But it was worth it, right? I mean, the record is astounding. you know.
Oh, we listened to it. I mean, it's still, it's funny. Joe Henderson's first melodies in Freedom Jazz Dance still to this day stick in my
Yeah.
ear. You know, in the way. I mean, it's also interesting how different you perceive things many years later, and how, you know, you still find things that you like, and then you discover some things that, oh, maybe that wasn't that great, you know.
Yeah, sure.
It's fun. It's really fun to keep investigating that stuff. But it was with Bill, and mainly through Bill, because Bill had the time more, and basically eventually they were not roommates, and so I spent a lot of time hanging out with Bill and listening to records, and any time I could, you know, have extra, I'd go over to his apartment, and it was through him that I first heard Carmen McRae. I would hear these records of her live with a trio, um, and the sound of an upright bass walking, and the way she sang, and the feeling that came. I remember the first time I heard one of those records, it was something just jumped to me like, man, I want to be part of that.
Mm.
And that kind of that was a really big deal for me.
Yeah.
You know, spending and listening to those things over and over and playing along with them, and just feeling that incredible force, or feeling that they created,
Mm-hmm.
and from not doing anything. She didn't have a great technical gift as far as a voice goes, and none of the people playing with her were, you know, they weren't really about chops, but man, could they really create a team work effort, and you know, not every time, but they just really swung, and they were really soulful, and what she did with what she had, that was a real template for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like how people use what they have to get where they want to go. Yeah, that's kind of been a real, if there's any secret to anything I do, that was it. That was the seed of it right there. And I
Mm-hmm.
kind of owe that to Bill, you know. And he would say, you know, speaking about Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa and the technique that, you know, like I'm sure when you're playing piano or whatever instrument, you're completely impressed by the Art Tatum's technique and Oscar's technique, and classical player, you know, Horwitz's, Rubinstein's, and Richter's technique. It's always, you know, the technical, the very surface stuff is what really wows people. But then Bill would notice that, you know, because I would practice just trying to get my hands to go as fast as Buddy Rich. I would go through all kinds of, and I wanted to do that. I wanted my hands, I wanted to be as dynamic and as impressive as Buddy Rich, or yeah, anybody but he was the model, you know, because he's such a, I mean, he's a freak. He was a freak, and I remember Bill, we were listening, and he is a matter of fact guy. He looked at me and he said, "Hey man, why don't you get your head out of the drums and into the music?"
Mm.
And I said, "What do you mean?" And then he put on an Oscar Peterson record, and I'm listening to it, and I'm not. I remember because at that stage I had an Elvin Jones trio record. Remember those
Okay.
records he
It
did on
was
Blue Note with
Joe
Joe Farrell?
Farrell. Yeah.
And I would listen to him, and I didn't get it. And he said, "What's so great about that?" And he's not even, you know, I was only thinking about the technique. He's only going ba-boom, ba-boom with the
Yeah.
bass drum. Or I did not understand it at all. Or I'd listen to other drummers and think, well, man, they're not even playing a solo. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I was totally guilty of all of that shit, you know. And after Bill said that, he put on this record called "We Get Requests."
Mm-hmm.
You know that record?
Sure. Yeah.
And he said, man, just listen to what everybody's doing on this. And I listened to not every, I mean, I didn't pay attention to only what the drummer was doing, but I noticed how it fit.
Mm.
That was a huge, I mean, those were the real greatest, probably some of the greatest lessons I ever had was having somebody mention that and then kind of paying attention to me as I discovered it for myself.
Yeah.
And I noticed how tasty Ed Thigpen was. It's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
wow. And then I start thinking, yeah. And then, my band director, when I was in high school, that was in the late 60s, Tuscan Jasper.
Mm-hmm.
He was the band director. He played trumpet, and he had a sound like Clifford Brown.
Mm.
He was amazing, and he was a jazz player. He played all kinds of music, but he could play. He would take me in after the band class because he ended up having to be a policeman more than a music teacher. The only reason people went to the band class for the most part was because they could get into the football games for free. Because they were a marching band.
Yeah.
There was no real jazz band still at that time. It was marching band or concert band. There was no jazz program. But after class, he would say, "Hey, Joey, come here." And he'd go in his little office, and he'd take out a record, and he'd put it on. He said, "You got a few minutes?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I want you to sit down and listen to this." So he put the record on, and man, it was like incredible. He said, "You like that?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You know who that is?" I said, "No." He said, "It's Philly Joe Jones."
Woo.
I said, "So you know who that piano player is?" I said, "No." He said, "That's Wynton Kelly." And he says, "Yeah, I was in the Army with him."
Wow.
And he would tell me, and then that's all he'd say. And he'd sit there and smile and listen to the whole record with me. And he'd look at me and just smile as I was kind of hearing this stuff. And it was like, welcome.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it at the time because I was just unaware of what goes on in society as an adult. I was just completely immersed in the music. But here's a guy that probably saw more horseshit than you or I could imagine in his life. And he could put that aside and welcome me into something that was so valuable, without laying any trip on me at all.
Yeah.
Just welcome.
Beautiful.
And that was, things developed from that. I mean, there are hours and hours of stories, from that. But that experience, and he would say, "Hey, Joey, I get together with these guys." There were the black schools and the white schools, and the two didn't really mix too much. And the black musicians, the music school teachers, they would get together and they had a big band, and they would just play Thad Jones charts or Neil Hefti charts or things from Count Basie or arrangements, stock arrangements that they could get. And they would meet once a week at somebody's high school band room after hours, and it was a whole scene, And my trumpet teacher, Tuscan, I still call him Mr. Jasper. he came over to me. He said, "Hey, Joey, we get together every Tuesday night or whatever night it was. I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday." And he said, "The drummer that's making it, man, he's making it, but he ain't making it." And he said he works at the airport and he's not going to be able to come at all. And he's, "Man, I think you'd fit right in." He said, "You think you'd get your dad to bring you over there?" And I said, "I'll be there." And so my dad, we drove over to John F. Kennedy High School and unloaded my drums, set up. And then sure enough, there were about 18 guys I never knew before set up, and then there was this one guy who came every week with a reel-to-reel tape recorder to record everything. He was a big band freak, and he would sit there and smoke his pipe. And man, everybody, these are like 50-year-old men or 45-year-old men, and I'm this little fart, And we played a tune, and they all looked over, and they said, the look on their face, they said, "Yeah, let's do number 42. Let's try this one now." And and the leader came over and said, "You think you can do this next week?" My father said, "Yeah." So that was, I don't know. I can't put any price on that. I am forever indebted to that welcome that I had into a community that was very special, that I respect, and now as a older guy, I totally, I wish those guys were around so I could go back and particularly Mr. Jasper and the leaders of the band, and all these guys that were, some of them had really hard lives, and that Tuesday night rehearsal that's what they lived for.
Mm-hmm.
Others were band directors and they had families and everything, but boy, that was my education in high school. I didn't learn anything. I was a horrible student otherwise, but that I learned.
Yeah.
And that was, wherever Jasper is now. I hope he knows how valuable that was.